Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Happy Ali, who's here to share with us his new book, The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. Did you know there's a way to tap into a wellspring of wisdom to guide you on your life's journey? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Happy Ali has a BA degree in psychology from UCLA, is a prophetic dreamer. He's a certified master NLP practitioner, certified master clinical hypnotherapist, and host of the Happy Insights podcast. Happy's spiritual journey began in 1995 when he dedicated his life to the exploration of metaphysical disciplines after a near-death experience inspired a dramatic awakening. So welcome to the show, Happy Ali.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh
I'm
my
very
goodness.
excited to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this. So what inspired you to write this?
I really want to take credit for it and say I've been wanting to write this for years, but I can't. I actually was writing my second book and I was in the middle of it, and it was called The Heartlands. It was about seeing life through the heart. And one night I was about to go to sleep and I had a little prayer that I usually say, but I said it very specifically that night. And I said, what am I supposed to write that will be relevant at this time and that will be most impactful and help people trying to get to the next level, basically? And said my prayers and mantras like I always do and asked to be of service, went to sleep. And when I woke up, the majority of the book was already written and delivered to me in my mind, which was very in par with the topic of the book, which is called the Intuition Bible, and how to receive information from within. So I was given 15 chapters overnight. And as I started writing each chapter, because I knew the titles, the topics, each chapter would turn into two. And then before you know it, we had 29 chapters. But that's kind of how it came about. But I was already an intuitive. I was a prophetic dreamer. I taught about spirituality. I've been a spiritual teacher and a student for 28 years. And I have my degree in psychology. So it wasn't like out of character for me to write this. It was very fitting. But because it was so normal for me and it was so part of my everyday life, I just didn't think it was special.
So why the topic in the title, The Intuition Bible?
So I really think that the world is now accessible. Well, I know that the world and all of its knowledge and all the people's opinions are very accessible to us now through the internet. And everyone seems to have very strong opinions about what is right. And even our parents have strong opinions as which direction we should take in our lives. And there's a lot of noise. And I really feel that right now, more than ever, we need to learn to tap into our inner wisdom, because it's tapped into our, not just our subconscious, but our soul, our highest aspects of ourselves that kind of have an idea of what we want in our lives. Not kind of, but they have an idea. It has an idea of what we want in our lives. It knows what's best for us. It knows our intentions, and it also knows our capabilities and our potential more than anyone else does. And it also can give us guidance that's very tailored to us, but real-time guidance. And it's usually not based out of fear or control or manipulation. It's really purely based out of love and with the intention to help us in each and every moment. And so that's how the book is written. And I know everybody has a different way to speak to their inner voice. So I kind of covered it all in the book. I went through every single thing from the smallest hunches all the way to the stuff people consider a little nuts, which is channeling, but everything in between. I covered the whole range of intuitive abilities and intuitive communication. And I called it the Intuition Bible because I thought it was kind of a funny joke because the Bible itself is a book that says, here, this is what you're supposed to do. And the Intuition Bible is basically telling you, hey, even though this book has a description of how everything works, it really gives you the tools to tap in to find out what to do based on what is right for you. So it was kind of like a play on words, and I thought it was very interesting. I just can't honestly. Half the stuff I write, half the stuff that comes to me, and the ideas just they just show up in my brain, and it just clicks, and it's basically I don't have a choice as to whether it's a good idea or not because it just comes. And when it comes, I honor it, I respect it, and I just move forward. And it was funny because once I submitted the book to the publishers for consideration, it was about 10 minutes before I submitted the book that the name came to me. And my publisher said, you know what? The reason we opened that email was the title. So you never know how things are supposed to be, but it was definitely the easiest process to get this book published.
Well, it sounds like you are just really tuned in that spirit can connect with you in that way, that you're so easy to have this information channeled through you.
Yes, and just like everything else in everyone's life, there are aspects of our lives that we are very tuned in, and there are aspects of our lives that the universe or God or whatever you want to call it needs to like smack you in the head to get your attention. And this just happens to be one aspect, my creativity and my desire to help people is one way where one aspect of my life where I'm very, very tuned in.
In your book, you talk about how really society has really, in many ways, shaped us so that we just kind of mute and tune down that inner voice that we have. So, what are some ways that people can kind of unlearn this and reconnect with our intuition?
Well, first of all, I want to kind of I don't want to demonize the concept that society has muted our inner voice because, first of all, the first thing we do when we come into this world as babies is we learn to fine tune our five senses. Of course, we're connected to something greater at that time, but in order to function on this planet, we have to be tuned into our loudest senses, which is the five senses, which are the five senses. So that is kind of how the system is designed. So we live, that we survive, that we thrive. Now, I might put the thrive in quotation marks because we are basically designed to survive, stay alive as long as we can, and die as late as we can. And that's how the system is designed. And then society has reinforced that over and over and over because we are very fact-based driven people, especially since science kicked in. And I believe and respect science so much because I'm half into science and half into spirituality, which is a big lie. It's maybe 75% into the spiritual world and 25% into science. But that 25% is very, very respected and just not part of my way of thinking. But the world out there is very, very, very attractive and it's bright and the walls are hard. The limitations seem very real. So of course, the world wants us to be safe. The world wants us to follow their agenda. So they kind of want the people to kind of follow the status quo. And if every single person was tuning into their inner frequency, everybody would be living their own truth, which would make the idea of even having fans or followers or voters very difficult. So I really think that it's just by design. There's nothing wrong with it. I think that for a society to survive, now I'm using the word survive, it is essential that we listen to our outer noise.
How do people know that they are not making things up and what they're hearing is their intuition? I think maybe someone that's new may think about that.
Well, to be honest with you, I think that anything that comes through you, whether it's intuition or advice from other people, or any information that comes at you or to you, has different qualities. And what you need to focus on is whether what you're learning is fear-based, if it's restricting your being, if it's creating potential, if it's empowering you, if it's boosting your confidence, if it's whether it's from love or whether it's from fear. And it's really important to know that because sometimes some people can tune into their inner voice and it's their survival mechanism talking, and it will be very fear based. So it's not only just listening to your intuition and deciphering what's right, you have to listen to all the noise that comes and see whether it resonates with your soul. Now, the thing is, I tell people this because my kind of superpower, well, one of my many superpowers, but the one that I feel like people relate to is my ability to make things very simplified and explain things in a way that everyone can understand and kind of put their defenses down. So I always say, first of all, think of the first layer of your intuition as your subconscious mind. That's the very top layer of your intuition. And if you think about that, first of all, you demystify the whole process because your subconscious mind at this moment, Marianne, that you're talking to me in one split second, you are receiving millions of bits of data that are coming through all your senses, including your inner senses. But your conscious mind can only handle about 150 bits of data. So about over a million and almost 2 million gets deleted, distorted, and generalized, but yet stored in your body. So think of an ocean that's being thrown at you, but all you're drinking is a cup of water. But the information that was in that ocean is still being stored in your subconscious, which is your body primarily, because the brain is not actually the main storage of the subconscious. I mean, of course, things get stored in there, but your subconscious is also storing stuff in your body. So if you're trying to make a decision in your life and you're using just your conscious mind and what the conscious mind has been aware of your entire life, you're basically making decisions using a single tiny little itty bitty fraction of the data that you have access to. But if you learn to speak with and learn the language of your subconscious mind, then there's a huge pool of data that you have access to that you never had before. People do that with muscle testing or trying to figure out what's going on in their body because the body knows if an organ is failing, even if you don't know. So there is a lot of benefit just to tap into your subconscious. And that is intuition itself at the most basic level because your subconscious is running your body completely at this time and it knows what it's doing. Otherwise, you would not be walking around or talking on the phone with me right now. So it's important to know that there is a level of intelligence that we have access to that's not supernatural at all. And then you have to slowly learn the language of the subconscious mind because I could tell you, the subconscious mind talks like this, or it gives you messages that are like this. And if you hear it like that, that means that that's where it's coming from. But that's not how everybody's programming is. Everyone has a different way that their subconscious communicates with them. And one of the key things to know and to do is to put aside time to acknowledge and pay attention to your other senses, your inner senses, your body until you become familiar with it. And the more you familiarize yourself with it, the more you start recognizing it when it kicks in. So then the question of whether it's coming from within or whether you're making it up becomes kind of obsolete. It becomes a moot point. But the funny thing is, the part of the subconscious that we have access to the most easiest, I guess, is when we make things up. Whenever you come up with something really fast, that's your subconscious. Whether that information is helpful or not, that's a whole another story that I can get into. But the question is, it doesn't matter where you're getting your information. See if it's helpful and if it's giving you energy, if it's relaxing you, if it's empowering you. So going back to where I started, I hope that answered that question. I went the long way around.
I'm glad that you did because that makes sense the way that you brought that all together. And it has me thinking for folks that are new to, because we have our intuition, but maybe folks that are new to really, purposefully connecting with their inner guidance. What is a tip that they can use to do that? Something simple that they can start right now?
Well, a simple tip is just to give 1 second or 10 seconds to your subconscious and say, hey, what do you think about this idea? And see if they feel anything. Give techniques. I'll teach you a yes or no technique before this talk is over. But I want to say something really important. Remember how I talked about all that data that gets deleted or distorted, but still stored? Well, that data that is being stored into your body or into your mind is being filtered by your beliefs. So the stuff that's not relevant to you is getting filtered out. So for someone who doesn't really think about intuition as something important or valuable, I will let you know right now, any intuitive message that comes through will be part of the stuff that gets discarded because it makes no sense to you. It'll throw off your equilibrium. So the first thing to do is to have the desire to want to be more intuitive and listen to intuition. And you cannot have that desire until you think until you believe that the information that will come through is of some value and equal or more than the other stuff you're receiving. So when you do that, if you truly believe that, and maybe by the end of this conversation, you will start to believe that or be intrigued by it, then the filtration process that happens will include a little bit more of the intuition information or intuitive information that's within you. And when that happens, then you'll start basically just accessing information. Now, you might not be able to recognize it in the very beginning because you have never dealt with that kind of information before. Because no matter how loud your intuition is, the five senses are louder and will always drown them out because they are not here for you to survive the intuitive abilities or qualities. What's here to allow you to survive is the five senses. If there's a tiger coming at you, your five senses better be, on high alert. So your intuitive abilities were designed in a way for you to have access to when you can quiet the five senses. And one of the senses is the most strongest one, which is sight, because sight is one of those things that's so intoxicating. If your eyes are open, you're pretty much in a trance. You are basically in a trance, seeing what is out there, and you're trapped in your surroundings. And that is a really huge dominant sense. So a lot of time just closing your eyes will begin to shut off your strongest five sense, and it will make room for extra senses to start kicking in. And that's why, well, I actually don't know why, but if you notice, there are people that are blind, but they have a lot of abilities that people who are sighted do not have because that big sense is shut off. In order for your intuition to kick in, you got to give it a little extra time or give it time in a day, give it importance, and close your eyes in that process so that you can start to feel. Because once you start to feel, then that's when the information starts showing up. Once you're really good at it, then you can have your eyes open, but it takes a little while.
What a great resource, and especially to look at things that way, because they say that our vision, I mean, we get such a small range of what is actually quote visible to around us, So it's interesting to keep the eyes closed as we are doing that connection.
In the beginning, in the very beginning, until you get used to it, it's almost like once you practice something, then it becomes a dominant sense. And then you can have your eyes open and that just gets added to the mix. Another thing to consider is that when you're looking at a lot of stuff, especially if you're looking at the computer or social media, our world is our world is designed to have a lot of stimuli coming in and hitting us all at once. And that puts our brain waves at a beta pattern, which is basically a really fast high brainwave pattern. And intuitive abilities come when you're in alpha, which is a little bit lower, in a high theta, or even in delta when you're dreaming, because that's where I get my information from, the magical stuff. And so just think about it. If your brain waves are really high and they're working really fast, and the information that's coming through you requires you to have a slower brain wave, it would make sense for you to shut off your eyes and shut the noise out so your brain waves can slow down and pick up that information because they're similar in frequency.
Now, you mentioned dreaming, and I'd like to touch on that. I'm just very curious what, like when you're doing your dreaming work, what does that look like? And is that something that we can use to access our intuition?
Well, I have so much to say about dreaming because I was born in a family that bragged about their ability to predict real life events in their dreams. And we never even considered ourselves a prophetic dreamer or a prophetic dreamers. We just thought it was really cool that we could see stuff in advance. So we always bragged about it and talked about it. And we spoke about our dreams a lot. My mom's side of the family. My grandma was a master, but she also dreamt a lot. So there was a lot of hits and misses. But there was never a significant event that she didn't dream first. I thought that was just their story. And I was just the odd one out because everyone in my family could sing and I couldn't. Everyone in my family could do a lot of stuff that I couldn't. So it wasn't until my 20s when I started having prophetic dreams and they shaped my life. I can tell you that the stuff that I saw in my dreams is the only reason that I am here today on this show with you. And it started with a dream where I was told that I was going to have a son. And it was ridiculous to me at the time because I was 28 and it was not 29, maybe. It was not even an option. I was a gay guy, barely made any money. I was spending all my life either drinking, going out, or going to work. There was no other options. I would stay up as late as I could. Having a family was just not on my list of things to do or things that were even possible, like physically possible. But then in my dream, I was shown that my best friend, who was a lesbian, was pregnant and she was going into labor. And as I told her, I asked her, I said, "Hey, do you want to go to the hospital?" And her wife just reached around and said, "No, I got this, Happy." Her wife's name is Rachel, and my best friend was Trisha. And she reached in her as she sat her down and pulled out a little baby boy and handed me this beautiful son. And I held this baby. And I had never been so in love because if you're a parent, you know the first time you hold your child, it's life changing. And I remember just crying from joy and waking up and realizing that my face was wet. And I had to wait till morning to call Trisha and say, "Trisha, we had a baby." Now, she already had a daughter who was 2, who was my goddaughter. Her name is Faith. And, and her birth was complicated. She said, "You know what, Happy? We're thinking about having another baby, but definitely don't want to know the dad and don't want to have any complications. So sorry, that dream is not happening." And I said, "Hey, we had a son, and that's just that." So 6 months later, they came to me and they said, "Hey, we're thinking about having a baby and we've thought about it and we want you to be the donor." And I said, "I don't want to be a donor. I want to be a dad. And if I'm going to be a dad to the new baby, I also want to be a dad to my goddaughter, Faith, because I've been there since day one. I'm the only male figure in her life." So we made an agreement. November 8th, 2009, my son Sky was born. And I became a father of 2 because now I had Faith and Sky. And all of that was because I had the dream. The dream. Now, a lot of people say, "Okay, you made that up or you made that happen." But it was a boy as I predicted, and it was a home birth as I predicted. It changed my life because obviously when you become a parent, it changes your life. And then I ended up stop doing makeup and start studying psychology so I can put my spirituality together for my and with science so I can teach what I wanted to teach. But I did that because I became a father. And then 4 years later, on January 30th, I believe, 2014, I had a dream that my dad and my other best friend died and I was burying them. Now, It was very detailed. It was very detailed. I even remember rummaging through the clothes after to try to figure out what they should wear for the funeral and stuff. And I woke up and I freaked out. I called my dad and my best friend and said, "Hey, you guys okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're fine." So I said, "Just be careful. You know, my dreams can be a little predictive in nature." I called my best friend Trisha and I said, "Hey, Trisha, someone's going to die. I'm pretty sure of it." And I remember her in a later text sending me a text saying, "You and your dreams happy. They always mean something to you." Very in a very condescending way, like not a I don't know if I'd say condescending, but dismissive way. And on April 17th, 2014, I had another dream of a car accident and where there was a woman in the front and a guy in the back, and they said their goodbyes and left. And all day I'm thinking, what's going to happen? And meanwhile, my daughter, my best friend, and my son were on a trip to Sacramento for Easter. And then I get a call at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. that night. They're like, there was a car accident and your son and your best friend did not make it. And I, you know, that was huge because most people don't want to dream that they're going to lose a family member and it feels like a curse. But it was probably the most comforting thing to have in my life was to have that dream because if you are grieving, if you've ever been a griever and grieved someone who died in an accident or something that felt preventable, you go crazy with the what ifs. What if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? But the fact that I saw the accident and saw the death so far in advance, I just knew that there was destiny involved. There was something involved and it was already set in motion. So it eased my grief. Now I'm not going to say that it made me feel any better because I cried for about a year solid, still do, but in a different way. But it's different when you someone dies and you feel like it's right than when you feel like something that could have been stopped happened. And it kept going because that night now by that time I was the official prophetic dreamer in the family and friends because I posted everything on Facebook at the time. And everyone knew my dreams, everyone knew they came true. But once your family dies and I've already seen it in advance, you know what? No one's going to be like, "Oh, that was just a dream." So I went to sleep to find out if my daughter, who was in critical condition, was going to live. And that night, I saw my son. It was the first visitation dream I had of him. And he was hanging out with a kid that looked African American, and they were just playing and having a great time and laughing. And she just said, Faith is going to be okay. Don't worry about her. Because she was really on the fence. We didn't know if she was going to make it. And that was when the visitation dreams began. And they were almost every night. He would skip a night, and eventually his mother joined in. And they guided me through the whole grieving process. Like before I saw his body in the dream, he fell off a ladder and showed me where his bruises were on his face. So when I saw him, it would be less jarring. And it was in the exact same spots. It was 3 spots on his face. And shortly thereafter, he started telling me I'm going to have another kid. And I thought, I said, there's very little chance that it's going to happen. I just got into UCLA the day after my son died. And I was a student. Like, how do you need money for a surrogate, a donor, and all that stuff. But he kept showing me this kid with curly hair. And he made me fall in love with him. And it was just one of those things. And there was a moment where it was just very clear that now was the time to take the action and the money would just show up. And I did. And I have my twins now that are 7.5. And it was incredible. So my dreams have been a great sense of comfort. And, last year I had a dream that my poor dad, he keeps dying in my dreams because he's an avatar of death, I guess, for people that are related to him. I had a dream that, he got stage 4 cancer. There was no cure and he was going to die. And I called him up. I'm like, "Dad, are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. What's up?" And I said, "I had a dream." He's like, "Uh-oh." And then a week later, I had a dream that it was his funeral. And I called him up. I'm like, "Dad, like you're dying or someone's dying. Like, what's going on?" He's like, "You know what? My baby brother just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and we're trying to do chemo." I said, "Don't even bother. He's going to be dead within 2 months because I have a 2 month timer from my dreams." And it allowed me to see my uncle on FaceTime, and it allowed him to go say goodbye. There was so much stuff that was uh, like transpired from the dream that would have never happened. So I see that as a blessing. Or when my grandma died, it was the first time I actually saw her dead, and we kind of had 2 months to prepare for her death. So it's not always bad news, as you can tell. Like met my last best friend in a dream 3 weeks before I met him, and stuff happened. So dreams have a tendency to they have a lot of qualities. Some of them are just, your subconscious clearing itself out. Some of them are showing your dominant emotions and vibration energy that you're feeling at this time and giving you a heads up as if you keep this up, this is how your life's going to turn out. And then we get to cross dimensions where time and space don't exist. You can see the future, see the past, see potential timelines, and you can also visit family members that are gone or live out fantasies that would never be possible to live in this world. So I get to see my dead family, I get to see the future, and I get to feel comfortable when bad things happen, and I get to be prepared when good or bad things happen. So, and I think everyone has this ability. I just think we don't foster it. And so I encourage people to journal their dreams for almost a year and journal their real life for almost a year and code it based on emotion and then try to correlate the emotions. And before you know it, you notice every time you have a dream about a red rose, something very specific happens. I'm not going to tell you a red rose means anything because everybody's subconscious has different symbology for different stuff, but it's yours to decode and it's there if you care enough. If you don't care enough about it, just live your life, have a good life. If you care for more stuff and you want more resources, this is another resource.
Well, let me say first, I'm just so sorry for your losses. I mean, that's really heartbreaking.
Thank you so much. But I'm
Mm.
really lucky because I get to see them after. So that's a blessing. The more you blur the lines between physical and non-physical, the less finite death feels, for example. And communication goes way beyond time and space. And bonds are eternal. When you create a bond, that's actually the easiest way to tap into non-physical because you have a touchstone on in another dimension. So mustering up their vibration or energy so you can tune into it like a radio frequency becomes a lot easier if you don't go into grief, because grief is a very low vibration energy and your dead relatives are very high vibration because they don't have a sense of doom and gloom that we do on this planet, and they don't worry. So you kind of first have to raise your energy and then tune into their frequency. And it sounds complicated, but once you do it once, you're like, oh, I can do it again.
I think that's so encouraging for people who have never gone through that practice because it makes it something that they can obtain.
It's harder at first than it sounds. That's why I start with the easy stuff. Because if I just tell you, oh, we can talk to your dead family, it just sounds like, well, I'm not like that. I wasn't born like that. And your belief system has a lot to do with what you're able to do. So I say start small and play. Just learn how your body says yes or no. So I'm going to give you this little exercise. Do you mind doing it with me?
No, I think this would be perfect.
So this is what I teach. It's part of the things I teach in my group coaching and whenever I teach intuition. This is like the intro to it. Now, it works for some really fast. It works for others much slower. I have twin boys that are 7. I do this exercise with them, and one of them's really good at it, and one of them really sucks. So the brainy one has a hard time with it. The emotional one has an easy time with it because he's more in touch with his body. And the brainy one's too busy analyzing. So I have techniques for the brainy one that don't work with the emotional one. So this one is, so you'll see if you're one of those people. So I want you to close your eyes for a second and just think of something that you know to be true. If it's daylight right now or nighttime, just say something that you know true to be true. Say, is the sun out right now? And or is the moon out or whatever it is that is true for you. When you say that, I want you to scan your upper body, anywhere from your waist all the way to your chest, and see if any sensations pop up. So I'll ask again, ask the question and scan the body to see if any sensation pops up.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to delete that. Now think of popcorn or something and how wonderful it smells, or coffee. And then I want you to ask something to be absolutely false. Okay. Now you can say, am I 9 feet tall? Or something that is untrue. Or, someone that loves you can say, does that person, hate me? And when you ask that question, then scan the body, see if you get anything. So ask the question and scan.
Okay, I could feel that.
Now, were they in different spots?
They were.
Okay. So for everybody, I'm not going to ask you where it was because everyone's different. Now, a lot of people, some people, the yes is in the stomach and the no is a little bit closer to their chest, or vice versa. Or, but some people it's on their hand, which is so weird. It's usually guys that have the weirdest places. Women generally, it's in a similar spot. But the reason I'm not going to ask you where it was is because I don't want to influence the listener. Maybe I do want to know where it was. Where was it? Okay, never mind. Don't get influence, listeners. Where was it?
Okay, so the no was more towards the solar plex, and the yes was towards the heart.
Okay, so see, that was reverse of what I just said, which proved the point. So for everybody, it's completely different. So what you want to do is ask those questions maybe 10 times, 20 times, 30 times over a course of a few days. Now, I'm not asking you to ask any other question but what you know to be true, and feel it. So then once you get comfortable with how your body responds to a yes or a no, now if someone comes to you with a proposition or something, ask the question before you agree to do something and see what part of your body responds. Because even if it doesn't have access to the future or the past, it was able to read their body language better than you can because it's aware of more. It's able to feel their frequency, the electromagnetic frequency, because when two people are close in vicinity, your hearts basically, your electromagnetic field from your hearts, they touch and they exchange information like cell phones do. So there's a lot more information that you have access to. And now that's not even going to the woo-woo spiritual stuff. That's just plain, pseudoscience. I didn't want to say science, but it is no, but the electromagnetic field is science, and your ability to take stuff in and that conscious mind's not aware of is called attenuation. I learned it at UCLA. That's also science. So see if you can get a second opinion. That's from you, but you won't know what it is until you've practiced the art of the yes or no. Unless you're my son, that's so brainy that is too busy thinking about what's happening that can't feel his body. For those people, I have different exercises, but I'm not going to go through them now. But this was just one way to explain that there are techniques that are really easy that can teach you how to access information.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us because that was a very easy exercise and I got the difference immediately. So I could feel the difference. And I've never done that before, not that way.
And I just want to say something. Worry happens at the very bottom of your stomach, and anxiety. So just, figure out what anxiety and worry feels for you so you don't confuse it with something else. Because sometimes worry and anxiety, because they're so strong in their survival feelings, emotions that are based on survival and not thriving, because intuition is based on thriving, and anxiety and worry is based on surviving. So those will always overpower your intuition, and so do your biases, so do your intentions. Like if you want an answer, no matter if you want a specific answer, no matter what your intuition says, you will justify it to say that whatever it is you want to say.
Well, I found your book to be so powerful. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work and be part of your community?
Well, you can always go to happyinsights.net, which is my website, or go to my Instagram, which is Instagram at Happy Insights Official, and you can find that there. But if you go to happyinsights.net, I have a really cool meditation that's free, and you can get it. It's how to tap into your higher self, in the most simplest way. I do this really cool thing. It's a hypnotherapy session that I do, and people bring their questions that they would ask a wise person, and I take them. They bring 4 questions, and I take them down to the deepest layer of their subconscious or the higher self or whatever they allow me to do, because it's always their choice and you're always in control when you're getting hypnotized, not the person hypnotizing you. And when I take them deep, deep, deep down, I ask them their own questions. And they answer from the wisest aspect of their being. And they get to answer their own questions. And guess what? People take their own advice way better than they would take someone else's advice. And then I take them into the future and let them see what life would be if they take their own answer. Basically, they take their own advice and withdraw that energy and anchor it in their body. And it's really cool. So I made like a baby version of that on my website for free. It's not quite that, but it's just something fun. So if you do that, then you can get a baby version of that for free.
Well, what a great resource. Well, Happy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Happy. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.